Hello, everybody. This is the Wizards of Ox Live, and we have some really good news for the whole community. A lot of people have been asking for support in doing the diet, and we have been listening, or we've been trying to come up with different types of materials to have available to you, from the small infographics after each chat to the different formats that we have, that you can have a YouTube video, you can listen to audio, you can look at the discussions that are going on in the groups and whatever. And today we are here with our chef, which is Karla Wiersma, who has authored this amazing cookbook. It has 400 recipes that are lower in oxalate per serving, and we are going to be talking about it. It's going to be available at this time with the electronic format in Amazon. And one of the reasons why we chose Amazon is because we have listmates all over the planet. And if we sign up with one particular publisher, that immediately by default limits the distribution. And I think this is something that is necessary, that is very useful, and that everybody should be able to get access to. So I know there were a couple of comments in the group about why were we using Amazon, and that's the reason why. I actually am a published author. I already have 2 books to my name. And when I talked to my publisher, he said, if you really want to have it available everywhere, that's the way to go. That's the best way to have all the material available, because even if they are in Timbuktu or somewhere, they can go to Amazon.com and download it into their device. Most people in Africa or in India or in Far East or whatever have access to mobile smartphones, and so they can have the information like that and avoid like taxes and all sorts of different things with physical printed books. So that's why we're starting with that. We will have a printed version for especially North America and the South. And we will have a beautiful surprise with it, because we are having some original artwork made for that book in its printed version. So I think that is going to be really important. And the other thing, and then I'm going to let our beautiful wizards, keep talking and hashing how do you adjust the recipe, whatever. But the other really important point is that we would like you to support the Oxalate Project via this book. Karla has been incredibly generous in all of her work to the group. She is the author of the spreadsheet that all of us use and live by. And she's actually the one that's typed all of those values and has made it available. And she has also done these books and has offered them to the project, so that all proceeds from this cookbook are going to go towards food testing. And just for that, I just want to give her a big round of applause.
Thank you.
But testing the foods is something that we found extremely important, because everybody has different needs, different customs, everybody uses different ingredients and wants to either integrate them if they're low oxalate or have alternatives for them if they're extremely high. But if we don't have the information from testing, the best we can do is guess. So the fact that with your support through the purchase of the cookbook, we could have some funds so that we can continue with our efforts for testing, that would be, really, I think, in the benefit of everybody. And thank you, Karla. Thank you again.
Thank you, Karla.
Well,
And as the person who's coordinating testing, I have to say this would be a great thing for us if we could test items multiple times, perhaps grown in different places, different varieties. We could really develop some better understanding of some of our food values. I'm sure those of us on the call right now have struggled from time to time with how much oxalate is in this potato in front of me, as an example. So the more we can do to make this diet easier for us to follow, and I should say this way of eating, because I don't consider it a diet anymore that I'm going to do for a while and then drop, the better for all of us. And if we can start to have averages for food so that we can say, we don't know exactly what oxalate might be in the tomato in front of you, but we know that on average, a tomato is X. That'll help us a lot. So we need some more testing even to kind of cluster the data so we can see where, you know, the best value that we can use for something is. And so this will be a boon to hopefully even making that wonderful spreadsheet like more useful for all of us.
Even stronger, exactly. And we could, you know, and once we have a regular source of funding, then we can also start doing some of the things that we wanted to do for a long time, but we haven't been able to. So, you know, look at some exotic species from different parts of the world, or even different growing conditions, and to see what impact the growing conditions could have on oxalate content. And that for the gardeners out there, you know, we could adjust the growing conditions to make sure that what we're eating or we're giving our families have, you know, a lower oxalate content.
and
So,
you have regional information.
Mhm.
You know, if I'm sending produce from Colorado, then I have a much better idea. You know, when I look at potato and I see grown in Colorado, I have a general idea. Is it still going to be 100% perfect? No, but for my region, it's going to be fairly close.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, people from California, people from Ohio, people from New Jersey, people from, you know, the UK, all
Mhm.
over, you know, all over the world. If we can get regional specific information, you know, that helps you, and in return it helps all of us.
Exactly. And the other thing is that if we stick to the one lab with the same type of kits, with the same type of machinery and the same hand doing the testing, the possibilities, the probabilities that we're comparing apples to apples are much bigger than if we take a study from India and then our levels from the US and, you know, different labs or whatever, because there's all these different factors that could influence that information. So if we can have our own list, knowing that we're comparing apples to apples, then that's all stronger, more robust information for us and for you.
And just as a quick bit of information for those of you who are interested in the testing, and when we're going to have our next round of testing, there is apparently some delay in getting the test kits that Dr. Liebman uses. And so the reason why we're waiting on our next round of testing is that he's waiting for his supplier to be able to get him those test kits. So who knows, we might even have money from our new ebook, which is coming out, for our next round of testing. So stay tuned.
Hey, thank you, Karla, so much. You just have no idea the gratitude that we have for you for that.
Well,
So-
the gratitude goes back to everybody, because this group, starting with the Yahoo group, but moving on to Facebook and to Groups.io, and the diet in general, you know, was good for me, but was an absolute game changer for my son. He wouldn't be where he's at without this diet. Was it the only thing? No, but it was a real big piece of the puzzle for him. And he's a completely different person because of this diet.
Yeah.
So, you know, quite frankly, to me, I owe this group and the diet more than I can ever repay.
And that's why we do what we're doing here today, folks. We're all paying it forward because all 4 women that you see in front of you have had amazing things happen within their families or with their health by learning more about what oxalate could be doing in our bodies, what the diet might do to help us, what supplements might help us, like Susan has often talked about on these sessions. So this is why we're here. We're paying forward what we've experienced ourselves.
Absolutely. So the cookbook, it's going to be the Insomniac's Kitchen. And
I
now,
love that name. And it's not just because I suggested it.
and we are, we're going to talk to Karla to see why the Insomniac's Kitchen. But the original title was Lower Oxalate Recipes for Foodies, because this is a foodie book. This is for people who love lovely, tasty, beautiful texture food and is willing to go for it. So, but Karla, tell us a little bit, why is it called Insomniac's Kitchen?
Well, when I was starting to do the diet, insomnia was my companion. And then going through menopause, insomnia became more of my companion. And when you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, you can sit there and twiddle your thumbs, or you can do something. So I would put on an audiobook and I would go through recipes that Ian wanted to have, or the husband would suggest, tinker with them and make them low oxalate. And then Monique I had put a tagline, you know, up at 3 o'clock this morning, this is what I came up with. You know, Ian wanted a stew. So, you know, here's my low oxalate stew. And Monique had said, you know, you ought to call it Insomniac's Kitchen. So that's what I did. And
And
a lot of it was that. And then some of the things that I would do was on the Yahoo group, I would do what's cooking this week. And part of it was to get my son engaged in the diet. And part of it came out of frustration that there were so many things that it looked like we couldn't have. You know, how do you replace cumin? You know, I want something with some Middle Eastern spices. I want something with a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of ginger. I want something Asian. How do I come up with these flavors? I want to be able, you know, some people live to eat or eat to live. You know, I'm kind of a live to eat kind of girl. And the son is kind of a live to eat kind of boy, you know. So once I figured out that, you know, you could use different supplements, once I found that little substitution Bible that said, you know, if you can't use coriander, you can use a little bit of lemon zest and a little bit of sage to give you that same flavor. And I could still come up with something that was fairly low oxalate, or at least lower medium. You know, I was, woo. And I wanted to pass that along to folks within the group. You know, you don't have to have bland food if you don't want to. You know, if you want to do, you know, just a little bit of herbs, a little bit of spices, you know, that's all good, and I'm not knocking that. But if you want to have something that's got a little bit of heat or a little bit of, and a curry spice to it, or, you can do that, and it can still be low oxalate and still be pretty tasty.
And I want to, and I just want to say that I was a huge fan of the Insomniac's Kitchen posts when they were in Yahoo. It was like, oh, there's a post. Let's try this. Let's do this. And the motor for this book was not only the lack of sleep. It was really someone that's very special that Karla already mentioned. And he would ask mom to make him all sorts of things. So you will find in this cookbook things like pretzels and foxtato salad and Ian's chicken and things like that. And the really interesting thing is not only that they're delicious recipes, but they're kid approved. And for those of us that are moms, we know that having a recipe that is kid approved is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. I mean, we did menu planning for a lot of years. And he was actively involved in picking out recipes. I mean, the kid used to watch Alton Brown's Good Eats with me. So, he was, like I said, he was a foodie. He would, find a recipe. Mom, you think you can do this? Well, we can give it a try. And, sometimes they were disasters, at least the first 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 or 5, but we got there. And it also helped him learn some skills that he needed. So, not only was he looking for recipes, he was my little sous chef. And I would take him to the grocery store with me so he could pick out the things, and we could talk about, nope, you can't have that. Yep, you can have that. This is high oxalate. This is low oxalate. This might be doable. This is how you chop the vegetables, put the fingers in. So, because I don't want a finger in there, but it gave him life skills. And that was, another thing that was important to me as a parent who has a kid on the spectrum. He needs to be able to do all of this stuff. So, he can chop vegetables, he can bake, he can fry, he can grill, he can use a crock pot, pressure cooker. He's good with all that now.
And he knows how to choose low oxalate ingredients, which is incredible. I mean, he is a perfectly capable young adult to handle and take full control of his own health, which I think is just incredibly admirable, Karla. And, chapeau, really, it's beautiful.
Well,
So-
he had his, trust me, he had his, I'm going to have that peanut butter cookie. Ooh, that hurt. Well, you have the peanut butter cookie, dork. Maybe next time have the sunflower butter cookie. He went through, just like every kid, pushes the limits, and, I don't want this. I want the whole wheat pancakes. Man, they tasted good, but God, my stomach hurts. So
Yeah,
he went
my
through all
kids
that,
had-
but he learned, he learned from experience.
Yeah, my kids had the same thing. And, amazing the opportunity to be able to teach them right from when they're young how to pick out the foods, how to think about their menu, how to, get into the kitchen. I'm pretty pleased with the kinds of recipes that came out of what my kids asked me for too. The only one I never accomplished was the croissant, but you've probably got a croissant someplace.
No, but I have an egg roll, and that only took like 10 tries to figure out how to make a gluten-free egg roll wrapper that wasn't high oxalate, because most of them are soy and wheat based.
Right.
So,
Yep. No, my son wanted me to come up with a croissant recipe. I have not cracked that nut yet.
That's,
Okay. Some things that you need to know about this recipe book is that it shows how we think about recipes. We don't think about an ingredient, we think about a serving portion. And it's based on serving portions that the recipes are set. So you might say there is no way this is low oxalate, but if it says it serves 12, of course, when you divide it by 12, then all of a sudden you are in the low oxalate range. So this is also a really good introduction to the kind of thinking that went into the recipes and how we do. There's already a couple of other programs on the Wizard of Ox Live in YouTube that explains how we hack recipes, especially Monique and Karla, you know, how they take a recipe and say, okay, this, and this, if you're really high, you take this, and then you take the other one, you know, to go medium, and then you go take this other ingredient and you make it low. And so all those changes and variations you're going to be able to see also in the cookbook. And I was doing the layout for the Kindle version, and I spent a good number of hours underlining per serving, per bar, per teaspoon. So please remember that the level that is marked there, it's per serving. This diet has its own quirks, it's different from other, it's different from other diets. It's not like gluten-free where you just say no gluten. You know, you're always going to be lowering your oxalate intake. So that's one change. Another change is that we look at the total consumption within a day. So if you want to splurge and get some habanero pepper in some of those recipes, or you want to do something with the fancy Eastern spices, well, make sure that the other meals are lower, but then just consider your total intake for the day. So these are all things that you're going to be able to see and work with the recipes Karla put in.
Can I say something really quick? I use online recipes a lot, but if you start reading Karla's book, you will start understanding how she's varied recipes in order to make them low oxalate, and it will give you kind of a skill set so that you can go to any foodie site and figure out, well, how can I modify this recipe and make it where it's low oxalate and just as good and just as tasty. And you may have noticed, if you've ever done that very much, that most of those recipes have a lot of people posting underneath them that said, well, yeah, I did this, but I changed that, you know. And so it's certainly not unusual these days for people to be tweaking the recipe to meet their own needs.
Yeah.
So,
that's essentially how I grew up. My mother never used a recipe exactly how it was written. You know, she was, I don't like this, I'm going to add this. And, you know, she was that way, and that was pretty much how she taught us. You know, don't have this bite. Okay, what, go in the cabinet. What works? You know, what can I use? I don't have cumin. You know, what can I use in place of that? Or, you know, if I don't have cinnamon, what are my alternatives? So.
And for everybody who's here as well, this serving size idea is also how all foods on the spreadsheet are rated. So we want you to get away from the idea that this is a low oxalate food and this is not. It's more, I can have this much of this food, and then does that make sense? Do I benefit from that size of a serving? But here in this household, we still have what I would call condiment size portions of things like nuts. Why? We can do that. And, you know, a little bit of nuts on top of something like a dessert cobbler or maybe sprinkled in a salad is lovely. And, you know, you don't have to make it an all or nothing thing. It's definitely not like an allergy, which many people think. It's not like a sensitivity, which many people think. It's, as Patricia was saying, it's got its own unique kind of quirks, but this serving size component is one of them. And if you're eating something that's really high oxalate in a meal, you could also put all very low oxalate things around it. So there's more than one way to think about how you balance out and ensure your intake's at a level that works for you. And working with the idea of an oxalate budget, it's not exactly like Weight Watchers points. I don't know if I'd not eat all day and then you have a piece of chocolate cake for supper. I think that might be bad. I think that might be too much oxalate, but there is kind of a points thing, and I try to spread them out over a day, and then you can work things in. Yeah.
It's like calorie counting. I mean, that's
A little bit,
Sorry,
yeah.
It's
bit, yeah.
quite similar. But, you know, one of the things I want to also say is that we have tried to speak very loudly that when you start reducing your oxalate, you don't want to make that big of a change from where you are. You want to only change about 5 to 15% of the oxalate content that you're eating each week. And so you take maybe 20 weeks. If you're extremely high oxalate, you might even take longer than that to get down to a low oxalate diet. So, you know, we on purpose did not name our group the low oxalate whatever, because we knew that it was an issue of trying reducing oxalate and doing that gradually over a long period of time. So with these recipes, you can, you know, if you want to go higher, if you need to go higher when you first are getting into the diet, then you can tweak it that way. You can tweak it up.
exactly. I mean, when
Instead
we
of
started out,
arugula, you've got kale. Instead of kale, you've got spinach.
I mean, if you need to, when we started out, there wasn't a lot, especially for the flours. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of information on, especially the gluten-free flours. You know, rice flour was thought to be pretty high, you know, brown rice or white rice flour, you know, the couple of ones that we had tested. And then I had stumbled upon the gluten-free kitchen, which, and this lady had used potato starch and cornstarch. And, you know, I was like, hallelujah, because she was making pancakes and muffins. And they actually, you know, was like, here, try this, kid. And he was like, woo. And I mean, even the husband, who is not a real big fan of gluten-free stuff, was like, you can make them muffins again. And yeah, them pancakes are, you know, are pretty good. And I tweaked them a little bit to kind of get a little more lift, because, you know, there wasn't, you know, you're not going to get a lot of leavening out of potato starch and cornstarch, but you add a little sparkling water, you know, a little bit of baking soda, a little bit of baking powder, and poof, you get a little bit of, you know, you get some more leavening. You know, your loaf of bread isn't going to look like a standard wheat loaf, but, you know, it's not going to look like a coconut flour loaf, which is, you know, maybe 3 or 4 inches, you know, and that's the most that you get. But she was a godsend. You know, she had all these recipes, and I was like, oh, good grief, I can play with these. And I did. So, I mean, with the recipes in my book, if you need to be higher oxalate, you know, use the higher oxalate spices. If you need to, you know, have fun playing with them. I mean, God knows I had, I had fun even at 3 a.m, playing around with these recipes because, that's was kind of my thing.
So that's fantastic. Listen, I'm just going to go around to see if anybody has anything else to say, but we've been receiving some feedback and we've been looking at our statistics, and we know that people are not sticking around watching us for an hour and a half. So we are looking at the possibility of just responding more to what you need and having shorter transmissions of the Wizards of Ox Live. So now we've been at it for 30 minutes, something like that. So I think we're going to call it a day. And we will put all of the information on how you can get this one and also the other 2 cookbooks that the Wizard of Ox have put out. So one is on smoothies and juices that Monique and Karla put their brains together to put that one out. And then the very first one that Karla did, I think, which was the special occasions recipes. So there's recipes for Christmas and Hanukkah and Eid, whatever. So for all these different traditions and all these different occasions, including birthdays and birthday cake and things like that. So I'm going to put all of the links of where you can get them. And like we said, we could really use your help in supporting the testing for other oxalate foods so that we can have even more ingredients to play with.
All the books will go to testing. So Karla's got the other special occasions book, and then the smoothie and juices that she and I did together. All the funds from all of these books will go to testing.
So thank you, gals, for doing that. I think it's fabulous. And so Karla, any last words, or Monique and Susan?
Bon appetit.
There we go.
I'll be one of the first ones to order coffee.
Yeah, no, it is a really great book. I was doing, the layout and the putting it into the system and whatever. So I had to read all the recipes, and there's some that I'm definitely going to put in my regular set.
Is your brownie recipe in there, Karla?
There is. I can tell you.
That's one of my favorites.
I think there's a black-eyed pea brownie. At the time, we didn't know about the Maya nut powder. So
Right.
I was using black-eyed peas and a little bit of cocoa powder and a little bit of coffee to boost that
the
flavor.
Yeah.
There's 21 breakfast recipes so that you get an idea. Everybody that's asking about, what do I give my kids to breakfast? What do I eat for breakfast? Breakfast is so difficult. 21 recipes for breakfast.
I see black-eyed pea bars.
Yeah, I think
That's it.
And
Costen.
Karla, can you say how many years you've worked on this?
oh, good 4 or 5. I mean, I was doing 3 to 4 recipes a week.
So there's a lot of work in all this cookbook. So really enjoy it, folks. It will save you time and it will be inspiring.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
see
you
how-
might find a new family favorite in here someplace.
Oh, absolutely. So with that, we'll just say goodbye. We'll post all the information in there. Thank you so much for watching and for joining us and for joining us in this foodie adventure. Being healthy and having a lovely meal in front of us it's not a dream anymore. It's a possibility. So
and being able to put food in front of other people, and they're not going to be able to guess maybe that you're on a special diet.
Mhm.
And there's more to come.
And there's more to come. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much. Susan, anything else?
No, mm-mm.
Okay,
I'm just proud of you, Karla.
Thank you.
we'll see you. We're all proud of you, really. Oh, question. Hold on.
Share your email for Spanish speakers.
I will. I will do that. No problem, Rosie.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Okay, see you then.